Okay, for this video, we're going to talk about something we get a lot of questions about, and that's how to take Nepenthes cuttings. As you just saw, we have a very long vine here arising from this plant. This is a Nepenthes singulana by Hamada, and you saw that this is a vine. We have it staked up along this bamboo post here, and the important part to look at when you're thinking about taking a cutting is whether you have a strong, at least one strong basal growing out of the bottom of the plant that will allow the plant to continue growing once you remove the vine. This one has 3 large basals. It's actually very well established. You don't need a plant to look like this to take your cutting. This is way overkill, and we've gone way too long without taking this cutting. But we're going to show you how to do it just because it's a nice demonstration. The first thing you'll do is get a nice sharp pair of snips of some kind. This is actually a bit thick for using a small pair of snips like this. It's about as thick as I would go for. You could use something even as big as pruning shears. We will also, just for enforcing a good habit here, talk about sterilizing these. This is a propane blowtorch. And if you're using your snips on multiple plants, especially valuable ones, it is possible to contaminate them with viruses or other nasty stuff. So you'll generally want to just get them nice and hot to kill anything that might be on there, and then squelch them so you're not burning the plant. But here you'll go as close to the base of the plant as possible. You can clear that up. And I know this is hard for people, then you just cut it. Snip. And that's that. We can untie the vine that we have all along here. And we're done. You don't have to be that careful with the pitchers, with the leaves, or anything like that. As you'll see in a little bit, none of that's going to matter once we're done here. Get rid of the post. So here is your finished plant. You can put that somewhere else. Let that continue growing with a bit more energy. Now that it's not putting all that work into making a vine. And then we can start to work on the vine. Whoops. Alright, the first thing you'll do, just to make it easier to work with, is get rid of any pitchers that are formed on the vine, because they dangle and they get all over the place and they catch on things. So this is what we have to work with. This is quite a bit of material. My general procedure now is to start from the top and work my way down, because the further up the vine you are, the more likely you are to get a strike. The more hormones there are up there growing the plant, the more vigorous it is, and the further you go down, the woodier and less vascular and less chlorophyll you see. This is getting kind of yellow down here. So you really want to focus on getting good cuttings from the top and work your way down and not let things on the bottom influence what you're doing. So we'll start here. You have your growth point, which is where the plant is producing new growth from. Your first leaf, second leaf, third leaf. I'll generally take 3 leaf cuttings, between 2 and 4 leaf cuttings. So for this one, we'll just take a nice big cutting right here with our already sterilized scissors, and we'll just snip it right below this leaf right here and cut. I will often try to angle the scissors as I do that instead of cutting straight across, so that you get more surface area. See how it's slightly angled? That's just a slightly more surface area for roots to emerge from as the plant grows. So here's your first cutting. Same thing here. You take 1, 2, 3 leaves and you snip. Another angled cutting. 1, 2, 3 leaves. These two are very close together, you can see. So I'm actually going to just do 4 leaves right here. These are close together because this piece right here is actually a flower that emerged in the past. So they went one after another very quickly. We'll cut that. 1, 2, 3 leaves. And then this will get rid of this woody stuff at the bottom because nothing's coming out of that. We'll just cut it there. This piece you can discard because it's probably just not going to do very much. So now you have these cuttings. You can lay them out side by side. And then you have to manicure the cuttings. So we're going to take one. Not that one because that's going to be stuff. We'll just take the top cutting. For this cutting, what we want to do is, what you're hoping for is an activation of a basal node. That means that at the top of each leaf is a little bump. You can probably make it out here. And that is where a new growth point can emerge from all the way up along the vine. Every leaf has them. Here's another one. And so you're going to always want with your cuttings for at least one dormant node to be below the soil level. And you can remove all of the leaf for the node that you're planning to have that happen on. So I'm going to take off all of that leaf, get rid of that. And then the rest of these leaves, I'm going to remove most of the leaf material from. That's because as this plant, now that it's been removed from its roots, continues to grow, the leaves transpire. That means they release water into the atmosphere, and they do that from the bottom of their leaves. The more leaf material you have, the more water you're going to lose into the atmosphere, and it's going to dry the plant out. The plant doesn't really need leaves when it's a cutting. It needs to be putting the energy that it has stored in the stem into creating a new basal offshoot, and then those leaves will allow it to photosynthesize, produce new roots, use those roots to suck up water, and then start the whole system over again. So you can be really aggressive removing leaf material from a new cutting. Again, that's a hard part for a new grower or an inexperienced grower, but it's a really necessary part to getting good strikes. Same thing here. We have these 3 leaves. Each one has a dormant node on it, like right here. This is the one that we want it to activate. But it might do any of these up along. You can never tell exactly what it's going to do. But again, remove all the leaf from the bottom one. And then most of the leaves from the next couple ones. So there's another finished cutting. This one I already removed the bottom leaf. And the next one up. We'll just get rid of this one. This is a finished cutting. Same here. And then the same here. This one's upside down. There we go. Bottom leaf, get rid of it. Most of that one, most of that one, most of that one. You can see now why I said it really doesn't matter what the pictures look like, what the leaves look like when you get started with this cutting, because you're going to get rid of it. Additionally, when you have a cutting like this one, with a leaf, and then a long span here with nothing on it, there's nothing that can activate on this. The highest up we can get a growth point from is right here. So if it's in the way, you can remove stem like this as well, with no real loss. So here you have your finished cuttings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cuttings. And now you can plant these up and get them ready to go. Here we have some 3-inch rose pots, some hydrated long fiber sphagnum moss. I really like rooting cuttings in long fiber sphagnum. Holds a lot of water, has a lot of oxygen going through it, and roots really love growing through this. So this is a really nice thing. If you try a coarser mix with a lot of bark and pumice and stuff, if the roots aren't making this point right here, where the roots will emerge from, isn't making good contact with some nice absorbent sphagnum, sometimes you can get less than perfect strikes on these. So I'm going to take just a couple of these cuttings. I'll take the first one. Some people, when they make their cuttings, will use cloning gel or cloning powder, or rooting gel as some people call it. This contains vitamins and hormones that tell the plant that it's time to make roots from wherever it's touching. So you'll take some of this gel, put it in a separate container, dip the tip of your plant in that. You really don't want to touch it with your fingers. It's not a great thing to get your hands on. But for most of these, we just don't do that. We get really high strike rates, especially for a really healthy, vigorous plant like this. No real need to do that. I'll take this cutting, I'll wrap it up nice and tight in long fiber sphagnum moss. Make a little ball. I'll take another cutting, do the same thing. We will be putting it just slightly below soil level, because if this node activates here, you don't want it to be growing all the way from below this moss and coming up. You want it to just pop out and then be able to see sun right when it comes out. So that's right, you want the dormant node that you want to activate right below soil level. Again, wrap this up. And then we can just take a third one, same thing here. This one is the growth point, so it's just going to continue growing from right here. It might also activate a dormant node, but probably not. But it's worth doing the exact same thing with that. So now you've got your nice ball of soil here. Stick it in your pot. And that's ready to go. Same thing with these two. New pot. Just wrap up these dormant nodes here, right below soil level, with long fiber sphagnum. This one as well. And you pot it. Write your labels for these, letting yourself know what the plant is when you cut it. Make sure you date it, because it's really helpful to know if a cutting is going to happen, about how long it's going to take, whether you should give up hope on it. We usually get strikes. It typically takes up to a month or two to get a good strike out of these, to know if it's going to happen. If they turn black, they've probably died, but you don't really know what's happening under the soil, so just give it some time. Some people will, depending on their conditions, put these in plastic bags to keep the humidity really high. Like I said, they're now losing a lot of water through these leaves, and they don't have a root structure to fill that water back up with. They will soak up some water, like a cut flower, through that bottom part, but they will lose hydration pretty quickly if you're in a dry place. We're in a greenhouse here. It's quite damp all the time. We keep the soil nice and damp, so we don't even tent these or put them under domes. We just put them right out with the rest of our Nepenthes, and they'll strike in weeks to months. And once they do, they'll have their own root structures. You pull them back out, divide it up, and then you can plant each of those individually, and that's your new plant. So now that we have those fresh cuttings taken, I thought we would show you what these cuttings will look like after a couple months. These are some ventricosa cuttings that were taken a little under 4 months ago that are ready to go. You can see that there are new growth points here and here, right here, down here. We're going to pull these apart, and I'll show you exactly what I was talking about. You'll just pull the soil out. You see it looks exactly like the soil we just did. Pull it all apart. And so we'll go through these cuttings one by one just to show you what to expect. So here's a successful cutting that created some nice new roots down here and activated its topmost growth point right here. We didn't get an active dormant node activation down here, but that's fine. We have a nice new plant there. Here is an unsuccessful cutting. This was probably part of the woodier part of the stem that we just thought we'd throw in there. This can be disposed of. Here's another cutting. This one did activate a lower dormant node and grew some nice roots right here. And this is a third cutting that's just starting to grow right here. You see it's just peeking out roots, these little bumps right here and right here. So this is a little bit early to be harvesting this particular cutting, but we're going to do it anyway just to show. So you're going to take a new pot. This one first. We'll remove some of this dying growth right here. Wrap up the roots, being careful not to damage these roots. It's just put a lot of work into making them, and they're a little bit brittle. So you'll just carefully tuck them in, wrap them up, get a little bit more moss on there. And just push that in. So that's a nice new plant that'll emerge from right there and grow up. Same with this one. Get rid of some of these old leaves. Gently wrap up the roots. Like this. And get that potted. And then same with this cutting. We can safely get this going. Remove a lot of this ugly stuff. You can also see another very tiny dormant node activating right here. So we might get 2 growth points. One from right here. And then one from right here. And so that's the whole process, from taking a mature plant with a large vine, cutting up the vine, potting your new cuttings right here, and then months later generally taking those cuttings that have struck, discarding the unstruck cuttings, and potting up the new plants that are now ready to grow as their own individuals. And then of course, just like I said with the fresh cuttings, you'll want to label these, make sure you know exactly what they are, so you can continue those lines. So, we're working on more of these instructional videos here at Predatory Plants, trying to get as much information out as possible. You can find more of them here on our YouTube channel, or at predatoryplants.com under the tutorials section. We'll be putting more out. Feel free to request information for future videos that you might want us to make. And happy growing, and thanks for watching.